Welcome back, everyone. It's here. And today I've got some r/BestOf for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading you the posts, giving you my opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. This post was collected by Direct Caterpillar 77, and their tagline is, "Saiyan is not a pogo stick." Original OP was Astarte Infernum, posted to r/TrueOffMyChest June 16th, 2025. I brought my sister to a barbecue with our close friends, and their husband crossed a line. I, 27 female, Italian, live in Italy with my fiancé, 35 male, German. A few months ago, we became close friends with a couple in their 40s. The wife is also Italian, and the husband is from New Zealand. They moved here about 5 years ago with their 2 boys. They always came across as the perfect family. Grounded, warm, fun to be around. We'd have poker nights, play volleyball, and they often invited us over for barbecues. We genuinely trusted them and enjoyed spending time together. So, when they invited us for another barbecue, I brought my 19-year-old sister along. She was visiting me, and it felt totally safe to include her. We were going to see people we considered good friends. The evening was like usual. Food, drinks, music, good vibes. But later that night, after we got home, my fiancé told me something that had unsettled him. He'd noticed the husband standing very close to my sister, his hand too low on her back. At first, he wasn't sure what he saw. Maybe it was nothing. But then he saw it happen again. Let me be clear. We were all very drunk. When we arrived back home, something was off. My fiancé was asking my sister if something had happened. She hesitated for a moment, and then just broke down in tears. She admitted the husband had touched her inappropriately. Twice. She got up to get a glass of water because she felt uncomfortable, but when she came back, it happened again. I was absolutely heartbroken, shocked, frozen. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What hurt even more was that my sister felt guilty. She said she didn't want to ruin our night or break our friendship with them, as if she had done something wrong. Watching her cry like that and blame herself shattered me. The man we trusted, someone we welcomed into our lives, violated that trust in such a disgusting way. And it's complicated because his wife is a kind, sweet woman, and their kids are all innocent in this. They don't deserve the fallout, but at the same time, this can't just be swept under the rug. So, my fiancé is going to confront him alone, and calmly. Not to create drama, but to make it crystal clear. We saw what he did, and it's not okay. He doesn't get to walk away from this as if nothing happened. We're not trying to destroy anyone's families, but we're not protecting a predator either. This man is not who we thought he was, and we'll never look at him the same again. This whole thing has changed the way I look at people, even those who seem decent on the outside. Sometimes it only takes one moment to see what's really behind the mask. I have to say, I am so disappointed and I feel like shit. As if I did not protect my sister. It's really shocking. Can't trust nobody nowadays. Has anybody had a similar situation? Relevant comments. Pamela on the go. It's not your fault. How could you have known? But you should tell his wife. OP responds, I am considering to do so, but I also just want to distance ourselves completely from this family. I am fully disgusted by this, as if I let my guard down. Aim High Universe comments, the wife needs to know you're only protecting this man. Shame him. And it is you and your sister who shouldn't be. I'll go, and it will be a lesson for everyone. OP responds, currently, my fiancé and I are still processing everything. We really feel sick to the stomach, and we're trying to think carefully of our next move on how we're going to address it. What confuses me, the wife was there. What if she noticed something but decided not to comment on it? Or act clueless? What if I make the situation harder on my sister? It is very complicated. And an additional response from OP. It's such a delicate matter, and I understand what you're saying. As much as I want to make a scene and lash out, I'm thinking of what is best for my sister. And honestly, this whole thing has traumatized her, and I don't want her to even be near this person and make things worse. Little bit perp 408. My, 24 female, partner, 27 male, have been together for almost 9 years at the end of this year. From the beginning, he was friends with this girl he'd known since elementary school, and she ended up getting married to her high school sweetheart maybe 4 years or so into us dating. We went to their wedding and everything. A few years into their marriage, my partner gets a call from his friend, and she asks if I had ever sent her husband nudes. I was in the car when she called, and I was just stunned because I had no idea what she was talking about. I was in no way into her husband and never thought of him that way. I found out he had colluded with another male friend of ours to take my phone at their parties and send himself my nudes without me knowing. He'd delete the chat history on my end so I couldn't see what he'd done. Then later, he'd send it to our other friend where they'd save it to whatever external thing they had, I guess. Not too sure. But all of this was happening under my nose for God knows how long. Probably years. My partner and I never suspected him, and it body slammed us both when we found out. We haven't made any new male friends and don't really plan to because stuff like that has happened so many times throughout a relationship that it's just too much of a risk. I know my experience isn't quite like yours, but I'm sorry for what happened to your sister and don't really have good advice except just try to be diligent and keep your eyes open. It's often the people you'd least suspect, unfortunately. OP responds, "Thank you for sharing your story. That seems awful. I can't even imagine the disgust and shock you must have felt. It is so true. The people that you least expect are the ones you actually need to keep a close eye on. You see, this is what makes me feel sick to my stomach. You see this family and you look up to them because their life seems to be going so good for them. Loving couple, smart as well. And honestly, even their relationship with their kids seem to be very healthy. As they're young, like 12 to 13 years old, but so grounded, smart, and well-spoken. You wouldn't even suspect a thing for them being mistreated or even having bad parents. This is what fucks up with my thought process. I'm like, why? How can this happen? Why did I let my guard down? I've always been somebody very cautious of older men being inappropriate. I've been sexually harassed back in my time of university with my professors. Even been touched inappropriately by my mentor when I was 17 to 18, who I trusted and thought was a good person. The thing is, I've always been the type of person that never wanted to cause drama and would stay quiet, even if it killed me internally. I hate this about myself. So with my sister, I've been so protective and vocal about how disgusting men can be. And she tells me every fucking thing that goes on in her life. And the fact that I did not protect her from something like this, it feels like I even brought her in the danger zone without knowing. It's so heartbreaking, really. Update, June 19th, 2025. Hi everyone, this is a follow-up to the experience I shared a few days ago about the barbecue where my younger, 19, sister was touched inappropriately by someone we considered a close friend. After sitting with it for a few days and after reading all the comments that we must tell the wife, we decided to have a serious talk with my sister if whether she's comfortable enough for us to confront them both. I have to say, we've been experiencing a lot of anger and negativity. Mean comments by her said out loud, how disgusted she's feeling and etc. and so on. It's been tough for me to deal with all this, especially as I'm responsible for her and I was supposed to protect her from these things. I know that this anger and lashing out is her way of dealing with the situation and I understand her completely. Still, very hard and it hurts. We made the decision to just create a group chat with them both, husband and wife, and explain everything. Exactly what happened. In the message, we described what happened, how deeply it affected my sister, and how we all felt completely betrayed by someone we trusted. My fiance witnessed it too, but wasn't sure until my sister confirmed it. So they can't say that my sister is making this whole thing up because it was witnessed. We didn't ask anything from them, we simply stated the truth. My sister made it clear that the only form of justice she felt she had was us exposing what happened to both of them, so that they have to carry that weight. She didn't want to stay silent, so I admire that for her. The wife was the only one that responded privately. She said that she was sorry for what has happened and sorry that my sister was uncomfortable, but quickly shifted the tone, making it seem that we're making it more of a big deal than it actually is, and in her personal opinion, we don't have to end everything because of this. She also said that she's sure that her husband will get back to my fiance and respond in his own words. She ended it with, "Best of luck, goodbye. No real apology, no ownership, no accountability, just a huge wall to the whole thing. But here's the part that makes me wonder even more. They never reached out after that night. Normally they'd follow up, inviting us for drinks. It was part of our regular rhythm, but this time? Silence. Honestly, I think she already knew something. So, this has been a painful process, but one thing I know, we protected my sister, and we didn't allow this to be buried. That alone gives us peace. What happens now to them, I'm pretty sure they'll continue together and act as if this never happened, and she'll protect her husband, no matter what. Typical. Final comments. Tremenda carucha. I feel your pain, OP. It's really messed up what those pricks did. But hey, at least your sis found some closure by making them squirm. I'm sure they'll regret not owning up and apologizing properly. Karma's a real bitch like that. OP responds, I still think that the wife is a victim in this too, though. It's a sad reality to find out that your partner of all years is an untrustworthy piece of shit. It's a complicated matter, but my priority is my sister and her alone. Honestly, I have some kind of closing thoughts on this one. The first one is that one comment with their own story of the husband sending himself the wife's nudes. I want closure on that, and I have so many more questions, and I just feel like there's no way for me to actually get them. So, that's something. I want justice. I want to know how. I want to know what happened. I want to know that monster got what he deserved, because good lord. Just yikes. Now, as for the main story, I can't tell if the wife is complicit, knew what was happening, or just in straight denial. Part of me wonders if maybe the husband, intercepted the text message and went straight to the wife of yeah, I put my hand on her shoulder, but that was it. And they're just trying to blow this up to make it worse than it is. I wonder if he just tried to go straight for the gaslighting approach in hopes of making it seem like they're just overreacting in hopes of saving the marriage, but making them out to be liars in the process. I also wonder how often this happens. I really do hope it is the case where the husband is just gaslighting and lying to the wife, as fucked up as it is to say, because the other option means the wife is complicit or just willing to actively ignore the evidence in front of her and would rather just live in ignorant bliss of it and just pretend like everything's fine and people are just overreacting. I don't know, but what are your thoughts on this one, and what do you think is the likely cause of the wife's attitude here? Because I am just left with so many questions on this one. This post was collected by Lucy Aria Rose, and their tagline is, I'm keeping the garlic. Originally posted to r/fuckHOA by Running is Life 42. Posted November 29th, 2024. We voted to remove our board president, and now she's refusing to go. Our HOA president has been wreaking havoc on our community for years. After enduring endless harassment and targeted enforcement, we followed our bylaws to hold a vote for her removal. The process mirrored one she herself used to remove another board member she didn't like last year. The vote passed decisively with a quarter of our neighborhood and 74% of all voters voting to remove her. But now she refuses to step down, and the management agency is backing her up. When we initially requested the board to schedule the vote, we were ignored for over 30 days by the entire board. Instead, the president and her husband began harassing residents, demanding that we hand the list of petition signers over to them and making intimidating posts on our neighborhood Facebook group. Those they believed to have signed the petition received retaliatory enforcement and were banned from the community page. After we made our initial request, it was clear that everyone knew about it, yet no vote was ever scheduled and no one ever reached out to us. Our bylaws allow us to schedule the meeting after 30 days. So, after enduring this obstructive behavior for over a month, we hired a neutral third party to run the vote for us. Despite all the obstacles, we succeeded. Now, the president claims she didn't get a chance to speak, even though she obstructed the process at every turn and refused to speak. She is the liaison with the management agency, and they take only her direction on everything. A majority of the board wants her to go, but the management agency will not listen to them, and the board members are all quitting in protest. Now they're forcing a second vote, which will of course be managed and counted by the management agency. This change rewards her for all of her obstructive and retaliatory behavior and undermines the integrity of the process. The entire situation feels rigged to reward obstruction and ignore the will of the community. Edit, for those asking, this HOA is in Washington State. Some of OP's comments. Commenter, I'm stuck on vote passed decisively with a quarter of the neighborhood voting to remove her. Is this anywhere in your documents? Our association documents require 51% of members for this type of vote to pass. OP responds, if under 50% of the association votes to remove, we need 66% of those voting to vote to remove. It's a community of 110 homes, and the vote was 28 to 10. Quorum was 22 homes. To another commenter, it seems odd, but it's actually the highest engagement in an election our community has ever had. There are a lot of people here who don't even participate. Commenter, I understand it can be hard to get HOA owners to vote, but I'm surprised that the governing documents don't require a quorum so that only 25% yes can be valid to pass something. OP responds, in our community, quorum is 20%. It might be in part because this woman has been running things the entire time and no one wants to deal with her, but there's very low participation in anything. Commenter, that's very low, and in my opinion, a bad thing. You can get a small group that wants to do something stupid, unfair, etc., and because of general apathy, not hard to get it through. And they succeed because of general apathy. OP responds, oh, I don't disagree with you at all. That's exactly how she stayed in control for so long. We tried really hard to get everyone out to vote, but so many people just said they want to stay out of the drama. She makes it so stressful to deal with that hardly anyone participates or goes to meetings anymore. Commenter, just a brief comment on something that sticks out to me. The HOA contract with the management company may specifically limit communications to only the HOA president. In my limited experience, this is not strictly enforced, but in this situation, perhaps it is? OP says, we hired a neutral third party. Who paid for it? And would that entity be willing to pay for an attorney? You are probably broadly in the right to hold a meeting yourselves if the board doesn't respond within 30 days. It's a thing in many states and bylaws, but there are a lot of details in the process. Has the HOA attorney weighed in on this? OP responds, we paid for it out of pocket because we couldn't think of a better way and no one would trust it if we ran the vote ourselves. We're consulting with an attorney, but unfortunately the company was just hired by us to run the vote, but nothing further. Commenter, there's something missing here. The management company has scheduled the vote. They believe that the previous vote was invalid. Did you give proper notice to everyone, including the president? Did you follow all protocols? OP responds, we did. Yes. Everyone received notice by both email and paper ballot. They want to revote because they obstructed and didn't host the last one. After 30 days of ignoring unit owners, our bylaws allow the requesting unit owners to host. They've invented a new procedure that violates a bunch of our bylaws. Absentee ballots are being done incorrectly, they're now having 2 meetings which makes it impossible for unit owners to request, and they're announcing the results on the wrong kind of meeting. And are saying that since we don't follow their procedure, our vote is invalid. They're doing all of this with no legal advice. Something is very off. Update post, June 20th, 2025, almost 7 months later. A while back, I posted about how our community voted to remove our HOA president. We followed every rule in our bylaws to recognize the vote, and 74% of people who participated voted to remove her. She refused to leave. Instead of respecting the results, she claimed the process was invalid, told the management company to ignore it, and kept acting like she was still in charge. Several board members quit in protest, and things got even more hostile. So we took her to arbitration. After months of fighting, the arbitrator issued a ruling that confirming everything we did was valid. Our petition was valid. Our notice was valid. The vote was valid. Her removal is official. Effective immediately, she's off the board. All that said, we had to spend our own time and money, and we fought every step of the way by the board, the management company, an attorney they work with, and a lawyer appointed by American Family Insurance. We were held to a much higher standard than the management company holds itself to. Our process followed the law more closely than theirs ever has, especially considering they once ran a vote where someone submitted multiple copies of the same ballot photo. If you try the same thing, your procedures need to be bulletproof, and you have to have $25,000 laying around to enforce your rights. If you'd like to read the full ruling, it's available here. Here's the court order. just took a peek at it, and as someone who has been through the legal process in the United States, this is in fact a legit fucking court order. Wow. OP brought receipts. Some of OP's comments. Commenter. Once you have the board restaffed, you need to fire the management company. If the community chooses to keep the HOA intact, it should be managed by the residents. Hire an accountant. Everything else should be handled internally, assuming you don't just abolish it. OP responds, they're quitting today, supposedly, and the insurance will no longer cover cases from us. Hopefully things can finally get sorted now. Commenter. Why did you have to go through arbitration? Couldn't you just send the details to the management company? She could leave, or not. Everyone else could just ignore her existence. If the management company refuses to comply, I agree 100%. They need to be fired next and immediately. OP responds, the management company and board actively assisted her. She pretended she was never notified about the vote when it was clear she had been, and that narrative fell apart during arbitration. Commenter, did you go to the head of the management company or just your property manager? I'd also make sure to go through financials. There could be instances of embezzlement, which is why they were helping her. OP responds, the president of the management company got involved in keeping her on the board and oversaw a second election where people were allowed to vote twice. To keep, of course. To a long, detailed comment. I did take a look at it. It is very long and very detailed. The too long didn't read is mostly about the abuse that HOAs can essentially deliver to the residents with little to no recourse. OP responds, that's what feels so unfair about the entire situation. The board committed to a course of action, fighting this case, without ever notifying our community, a procedure they are required to follow, and was protected from following the law and respecting the will of our community by their insurance. Our only recourse as homeowners was costly and took 8 months. Commenter, we had to spend our own time and money and were fought every step of the way by the board, the management company, an attorney they work with, and a lawyer appointed by American Family Insurance. You mentioned the management company attorney. Where was the association's attorney in all of this? OP responds, sorry, the they in the above refers to the association's attorney. She refused to recuse herself from the case and was the primary point of contact with him throughout the case, without ever disclosing the case existed to our community, as it is required before they proceed with a course of action. They ran up thousands of dollars in legal fees and made the community that voted her out pay to keep her on the board, before handing the case off to the insurer. Our premiums have now doubled. Commenter, it's totally insane that these people can hold an entire neighborhood hostage. It took 6 months for the vote? OP responds, vote ended in November, but it took 7 months to have our vote upheld in court. We sent multiple demand letters, requests for mediation, and then filed for arbitration, had an injunctive hearing, and finally, had a final hearing to reach this decision. Commenter, wait, the management company has to be very careful here. Neutral. The attorney would have advised that if the process were legit, the president was out. OP responds, the management company was anything but neutral, unfortunately. They encouraged the board to invalidate the vote and then wrote a summary to provide to the community attorney that misrepresented the matter completely, leading the attorney to recommend a third vote rather than accept ours. When we were finally allowed to present our process to a judge, we prevailed. I'm lucky enough to live in a neighborhood where I have an HOA that's actually pretty awesome, but unfortunately that seems to not be very common. Most HOAs either do hardly anything at all or cause everyone active amounts of hell, like this one here. I would be hella interested to find out what an audit brings forth, because there is no way in hell shady shit wasn't happening for how hard they were fighting the vote. Or maybe they were just so addicted to power they thought they could just continue to abuse the bylaws in hopes that no one would continue to fight it, and eventually they would just give up from apathy and not really care enough. Either way, good and OP and their neighbors for actually standing firm and not letting the HOA bully them as they proceeded to violate their own rules while forcing OP and their neighbors to follow every rule to the actual letter of the law and invalidating it if their actions didn't meet their interpretation of the bylaws. Either that or just flagrantly ignoring them. Just gross. This post was collected by Choice Evidence 1983, and their tagline is, "It dawned on me that he was a wizard." Originally posted to r/AskAManager, October 16th, 2023. My new manager is someone I slept with years ago, and he doesn't know we have a child. The backstory. I went back to university in my late 20s to do my PhD, and shared an office with a few other students for many years. One of the students, Jacob, completed his thesis and was moving back to his home country, so we all went out for a congratulatory/farewell drinks. One thing led to another, and Jacob and I spent the night together. A few weeks later, I realized I was pregnant and I had no way to contact Jacob. His university email and mobile number had been deactivated since he had left the university and the country. I didn't need anything from him and was fine to raise the child alone, but I thought he had a right to know. I Googled him a few times over the years, but never found him. This last week, our department head emailed everyone to introduce and welcome our new manager, Jacob, with a photo and a blurb about his education and work history, so I know for sure it's him. The night we spent together changed my life because it made me a parent. So I've thought about Jacob from time to time when my daughter asks about her dad, or I notice a genetic trait she didn't get from me. However, I doubt Jacob has given that night a second thought. I have no idea whether he will have any concerns about being my manager given our history, or whether I'm making a bigger deal of this than I should. For what it's worth, in my years of sharing an office with Jacob, he seemed easygoing and practical. In our company, it is common for everyone in the department to reply all to these introduction emails and introduce themselves, welcome the newcomer aboard, and explain how their role will interact with theirs. I'm not so sure if my email should note that Jacob and I studied together years ago as a way to get that out in the open, or should I email him individually and offer to have a discussion about keeping our history out of the workplace if he thinks it's needed. I'd appreciate any suggestions for language that indicates I'm not concerned and will be completely professional. And then, in direct contradiction to that, I'd also appreciate a script for a separate email saying, "Can we please meet outside of work because I need to tell you something important about our history," so I can tell him about his daughter. If you or any commenters think I shouldn't tell him, or I should let him settle into his new country and new job first, I would definitely take that on board. OP did end up getting a response from Allison, who not only runs the website, Ask a Manager, but also apparently runs r/Ask a Manager, which I definitely recommend taking a look at the website Ask a Manager because Allison does provide very good advice. Allison's response goes as follows. Oh my goodness, this is what is professionally referred to as a real clusterfudge. The issue isn't that you're making too big of a deal out of it, you're not making a big enough deal of it. It's a really big deal. I'm less concerned about the one night together than I am about the fact that you share a child, and that he doesn't know that yet. Normally, the night together would give me some pause too, since he's your manager and that can complicate things, even if you're both scrupulously professional about it. But that's vastly overshadowed by the shared child. Jacob can't possibly be assumed by any objective observer to be able to manage you objectively or credibly or fairly when you have a child together. Your employer almost certainly wouldn't have hired him to manage you if they'd been aware of the situation, which is no one's fault. Jacob didn't know and doesn't know, your company didn't know, and you had no way of knowing he was under consideration. But here you all are. One of you is almost certainly going to need to change jobs. Until that can happen, the best solution would be for you to report to someone other than Jacob. But how feasible that is depends on things I don't know, like the nature of your jobs. I strongly recommend doing one and possibly two things before you do anything else. Definitely talk to a lawyer, and ideally talk to a therapist too. The lawyer because of potential legal ramifications that you want to be prepared for. How will you respond if Jacob wants shared custody? What if your employer tries to push you out? Both of those could end up being non-issues, but the potential ramifications are significant enough that I'd want you going in prepared and with help lined up. And the therapist because the situation is serious enough that some professional guidance will help. Good luck! And in my opinion, when it comes to asking the internet for advice, especially when it comes to asking a manager for something, Allison will give better advice than anyone on Reddit ever could. So if you have something going on at work, Rather than going to Reddit, go to Ask a Manager. OP's response to Allison. Thanks for your comment at the top, Allison. The extent to which I tried to find Jacob wasn't relevant to my question, so I didn't include the efforts I went to. For the commenters who are curious, understandably, I really did try when I first found out I was pregnant. I asked other people we shared an office with, but no one had any information. We were students who shared an office and sometimes went to the uni bar together. We never spent any time together outside of uni. I asked Jacob's thesis supervisor, but it was Christmas/Australian summer there, so he was on leave for 2 months. When he got back, he gave me the address on Jacob's file, which was, of course, the Australian address he didn't live at anymore. The uni had a next of kin Australian contact number on file for his aunt, but no one ever answered it when I rang. Jacob is Chinese with a very common surname, and Jacob is just the name he used in my country. I don't know his actual given name, so attempts to find the correct Mr. Wong in a country where they don't use Google or Facebook went nowhere. I searched for recent publications about Jacob's thesis topic and found a paper with Jacob Wong as one of the authors. I contacted the corresponding author and asked for Jacob's email, but they never responded. By this point, I had to give up because I was so sick with hyperemesis gravidarum and needed to focus on my baby's health. Update 1, June 11th, 2024, 8 months later. Thank you for answering my letter. You were right, it was a really big deal. I was viewing the Jacob as my manager problem from his perspective. Until I told him otherwise, it was just a simple one-night stand over a decade ago, and it didn't seem like a huge problem. I hated and appreciated the reality check. I regretted reading the comments, but thank you also for moderating them as quickly as you did. A lot happened in a short space of time. Thankfully, I already had a therapist. First, I spoke to my union rep who said, "Say nothing, but call us if HR tries to set up a meeting with you." Staying silent and having Jacob independently declare the prior relationship when he arrived would have been problematic because I'd still end up in the same position and I would have lied by omission. Our HR team can be gossipy and they know the age of my half-Chinese daughter. So I needed to have as much control as possible over the disclosure. I spoke to an employment lawyer who reviewed our policies, and at his suggestion, I wrote an email to HR declaring a prior relationship with Jacob. And then I was immediately pushed out. Even if you have all the legal support in the world, you can't prevent someone from doing something illegal. You just have recourse afterwards. In a meeting with my lawyer, the union rep, HR, and a member of the senior management team, I was asked to resign. When I said no, they insisted on a statutory declaration about the relationship with Jacob, stating what happened, when it happened, how many times it happened, and who initiated it. I also said no to that. We ended the meeting with each side agreeing to think about possible solutions. The company's solution was to start messing with my pay, my benefits, my swipe card access to my office, my computer login, and my email/calendar account. They spread rumors about me, and I heard coworkers whispering that I'd had an affair with a manager. They sent me for a random drug test at a time when I was scheduled for an important meeting with clients. They canceled accommodation that had been booked for upcoming travel, which I only found out because I was getting paranoid and called the hotel. I can't describe how awful it feels to know that someone with this kind of power over your job is devoting their time and energy to thinking of ways to screw with you. Every day I was going into work wondering what was waiting for me, and it was wearing me down fast. The advice from union rep was to go back in time and follow their first piece of advice, or just keep documenting everything as we prepare to take legal action. The lawyer estimated that it would take at least a year to get any kind of resolution, and I didn't even want the job anymore. By this point, I wasn't sleeping much, and I had cried a few times at work. I was beginning to crack, and we were just getting started. So, I resigned. I wish I'd held up better under the pressure, but it was all just too much with the looming deadline of Jacob's start date at our office, and whatever way HR was going to drag him into this. I'm lucky that I can take my time looking for a new job, so I've had some space to process everything. Outside of the work stuff, I spoke with a family lawyer who outlined all the possible ways this situation could go, and what the most likely outcomes were. Basically, my daughter is old enough that What she wants would get heavily weighted by a court if it came to that. I've spoken to my daughter many times about her father. I told her what I knew about him and that I had tried to contact him. I've offered for her to see a therapist if she ever wanted to talk about it with someone who wasn't me. And she's always said, thanks, but no thanks. The family lawyer helped me write a letter, which I left for Jacob. I told him about his daughter, said I wasn't trying to get anything from him, and gave him the contact details of my lawyer. After a few weeks of me freaking out that HR had somehow intercepted the letter, he emailed my lawyer. He was the easygoing and practical Jacob I remembered. He was still processing it, but said he wasn't going to take any legal steps. He offered us his family medical history. He apologized if I resigned because of him, and he said he would like to meet our daughter if she's interested. She also has some siblings. I told her all of this. She said she's happy that she has her father's contact info, but she doesn't want to meet him right now. She's of the view that having him in our lives would cause unwanted disruption, and she doesn't even know about the work clusterfudge. Update 2, June 9th, 2025. 1 year later from the last update. I'm incredibly grateful for the support you and the Ask a Manager community gave me at a stressful time, so I thought I'd share a final update. My daughter changed her mind and has been in contact with Jacob. It's still a bit awkward between them, but they have some hobbies in common, which they've bonded over. My daughter also seems very excited to have some siblings who adore their cool new big sister. I know some people were wondering why my old company reacted the way they did. For reasons I can't go into, my work gets scrutinized by outside authorities and my manager's role is primarily a quality control one. Any suggestion that my manager had not checked my work impartially enough due to a personal relationship could have been career-ending for both of us. Additionally, the work I do is in a very specialist field, and there are only a handful of people in the country who do it. Another company in a similar field had initially approached Jacob, who has had an amazing career by the sounds of it, to start a new development at their company doing the same thing. My old company paid a buttload of money to lure him over so that he wouldn't be in direct competition for clients and employees. All of this meant that I couldn't report to Jacob. There was no other manager I could report to, and the company couldn't risk him going back to their competitor. Between the two of us, Jacob was the better asset to keep and the worst threat to lose. I'm not excusing the behavior of my old company, but there was logic to it. I'm still angry about the way they treated me and how helpless I felt, but that is slowly fading over time. I had trouble finding a new job. Financially, we were okay, so I was being picky. I wanted to stay in my current city. After almost a year out of work, Jacob told me he'd been approached by the first company who still wanted him to start their new department. He was happy at my old company, but he offered to take the new role if I wanted to try to get my old job back. I would never ask him to do that, and I also never want to go anywhere near that company again. So I said no. Jacob turned the other company down, but gave them my name. It's a step up from where I was, but they interviewed me, and I got the job. I've been there about 6 months, and it's enjoyable so far. Plus, I've never procreated with anybody in the chain of command, so it seems like a good place to work. I've hired one of my former coworkers, plus 2 recent graduates from my alma mater who are bright, motivated, and quickly getting up to speed. Unlike my old company, we don't have a lengthy waitlist for our services. Yet. So a few clients have started coming to us instead of them. I'm delighted that I'm becoming the very threat my old company was trying to avoid when they pushed me out. Great for you, OP. I figured this would be a nice story to end things on because it actually, despite how the post went, ends on kind of a positive note. OP's working at a better job, they have a better position in life, their daughter meets their father, the father's not being an asshole, the father actually turned out to be an awesome guy, and literally recommended her for the position that he was actively being sniped for. Like, this is almost a Hallmark movie outcome. I mean, yeah, OP had to go through absolute hell with their company pulling just some straight up bullshit, trying to make their life miserable, but in the end, they're the ones who ended up suffering the most from it. Good on OP for becoming the exact threat they wanted to avoid. Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget this whole thing is basically brought to you by GamerSupps. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend GamerSupps enough. Use code OZ at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Pressing Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.